everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Gore Goblins. I'm
Yay!
John,
I'm Justin.
and together we're Gore
Yeah.
Goblins.
Don't worry. We messed it up.
We don't even-
It's becoming part of our
Is
thing
it
now.
even an intro anymore? If
It's
I don't fuck it
our
up.
intro. It's our intro.
Anyway, yeah, we're John and Justin. We record podcasts sometimes.
I can't make the noise.
You can't do it. It's like I can't do it right now either. It'll come to me. My throat's all fucked up because I ate hot wings. Forgive me. But no. So we record podcasts about movies, horror movies specifically. I need to stress that. And today is our first foray, not into foreign horror because we already did that with High Tension, but into J horror specifically.
Yeah.
We're looking at 3 movies today.
3.
More like 2.5, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, true.
We're starting the Ju-On franchise because that's what everybody voted for. It was between that and Hatchet. If you remember, we flipped a digital coin and it landed on tails, which was Ju-On because I think Hatchet was heads, right? I think that was like the joke that we made.
That was the joke, yeah.
Yeah, so here we are. We're covering, in this episode, I know I mentioned we were going to do The Curse and The Curse 2 in one episode, but on the Blu-ray collection that I got from Arrow, great collection, by the way. If you want to buy it, it is region locked, so it's probably not going to play on your player unless you have a region-free Blu-ray player, except for the 4K disc for The Grudge. That one's region-free because 4K discs are region-free. But it's a very good collection. It was like $60, $65, I think, and it imports to a bunch of different little video stores in the United States. You order from one of them, you get it in the mail, and then you watch it. It's great. It comes with The Curse, The Curse 2, The Grudge 2, Black Ghost and White Ghost.
That's racist.
And that's it. Is it? I don't know if it is, but I'm sure somebody will tell me. It's all those movies. It does not come with any of the American movies, and it doesn't come with the reboot duology that came out in Japan. Those are all movies we're going to cover regardless. But for now, we're doing The Curse 2, and Ju-On the Grudge. There's a lot to talk about here. There's a lot to say. Hopefully we can
remember.
Hopefully this episode won't be too short, but it might be. And you know what? That's fine. As long as it's 30 minutes, I don't care. Because to be honest,
we'll make it.
Because to be honest, I be yawning. I be yawning quite a bit, and I don't, and I'm like self-conscious about it now. So anyway, I guess we'll start this off. It was written and directed by Takashi Shimizu. He also made another J-horror movie called Reincarnation, which was recommended to me by my buddy Aaron. Have not watched that yet, but I'm aware of it. And yeah, this was like the first thing that he really made that's like his own. Because back in like '98, Ringu came out, and that was like Japanese horror was kind of on the fritz, and then that came out, and everybody was like, whoa. And then because that came out, everybody was like, let's copy it. So then you get a bunch of ripoffs of The Ring in Japan. And then it was a combination of the American remake of The Ring being successful and the fact that J-horror was on the fritz yet again after like 4 years that led to Shimizu approaching a producer and talking about how he wanted to make Ju-On the Grudge because he had already made The Curse 1 and 2, which were kind of like short films. They were released on, I think it's called VCD. Is that what it's called?
I think that's what it was.
It's a specific type of like media that it's basically a VHS in Japan, but it's not on a tape. It's hard to explain. These V Cinema. It's V Cinema is what it's called, and they're basically just straight to DVD movies, and they were both like little short movies, and then that itself was spawned off of 2 short films that came off of a TV show. One of them is just a bunch of 4s, and the other one I don't remember the name of, but those were kind of the progenitor for The Curse, and then The Curse was a progenitor for The Grudge. And The Grudge came out and fucking changed everything in Japan again. Because, you got to remember, J-horror before Ringu and The Grudge was shit like Kuroneko and Onibaba, and I'm sure there was stuff in the 80s too. But a lot of it was apparently influenced by, like, slashers from America, because around that time, a lot of a lot of Japanese audiences were being exposed to Western media, like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Evil Dead, stuff like that. So, they started to kind of imitate that, and then, Ringu came out and changed everything, and then The Grudge came out and changed everything even more. And here we are, 20 years later, still talking about it in some form or fashion.
Yep.
But yeah, this is a good movie, I think. The Curse and the Curse 2 are a little weird.
Yeah, they were.
A little hard to follow. But then The Grudge itself, I think, is
It's pretty solid.
It's very condensed. It's a very cohesive piece of horror that I think there's a reason that it's still effective 20 years later. But first, I guess I'll ask Justin, what did you think of The Grudge and The Curse 1 and 2? Why don't you just give me your general thoughts about all that, and then we'll start talking about all of that.
Well, first of all, comes the struggle of me trying to find the damn movies. I understand they get low rated and they're not super popular. Well, at least Curse 1 and 2 were, every time I found them, they were like 2 to 3.5 stars on them.
Yeah.
But I finally was able to watch it. Not the exact cuts of the movie, but like a weird custom cut somebody made on YouTube that was just basically the Curse 1 and 2 put together, which is honestly how it should have been in the first place.
Yeah, I let me mention this. So The Curse and The Curse 2 both came out in 2000, straight to video. The Curse is about 70 minutes, and it's a little self-contained story. It's told in non-linear fashion through a series of vignettes that kind of go over different characters as they're affected by the curse. The Curse 2, half of it is a recap of the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
And by recap, I mean the last 2 vignettes of the first movie. Is it vignette or vignette? I don't care. I'm going to say vignette. But it's the last 2 vignettes from the first curse. And then it's its own thing. But like Justin said, it should have just been one whole thing. So the cut that Justin's talking about was recommended to me by my buddy Aaron. He loves to recommend stuff to me. He's a great guy. Go follow him on YouTube. His name is Dank. He's good. But also, he recommended that cut to me, but I had already bought the box set, so that's how I watched it. Because I was saving it for when we covered it. But yeah, that's how you watched it, and what was that experience like? Because for me, it was kind of repetitive. It was very repetitive, actually.
I kept getting lost, and it didn't help that I was tired from work, and then trying to stay immersed while reading the subtitles and trying to keep track of what was happening and who's who.
Yeah,
I was just like confused, and then I fell asleep a couple times, so I had to rewind the movie, and then I was even more confused, and I was like,
that happens.
Just stay awake, watch the whole thing, and then just try to remember shit. And so I did that.
I will say that I kind of like half paid attention when I watched it because I was in the middle of doing something else. And I was, but like I got the gist of it.
Yeah.
And I mean,
I mean, watching The Grudge, you understand the whole premise of the curse and everything like that.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily need to see like what happened to this specific character, aside from maybe like a couple instances that pop up in The Grudge.
Yeah, I think the only significant thing, full spoilers, by the way. Listen, from here on out, if you're listening to this episode, we're just going to assume that you've already seen this shit. So that's how we're doing this from now on. Because
just don't take our reviews as you watching the movie. Go watch it for yourself, even if we say it's bad or we don't like it.
That's why we tell you what we're going to watch next week, so that way you can watch that and and then just have a discussion with us. And obviously not with us. You're just going to be yelling into the air as I filibuster, because apparently I'm good at that. And so that's what you'll be doing. And then you'll be saying, "Shut up!" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know, I'm aware, but that's why I'm doing this, because I never stop." But yeah, so I think the only significant thing in The Curse and The Curse 2 is you see what happens to Kayako and Toshio and everything. It kind of gives you a little bit of backstory, but like you don't need that.
The origin of the curse.
Yeah, you get the origin of the curse, which is it Takeo? Is that his Takeo? Yeah, that's his name. I keep wanting to say Taiko, but it's Takeo. He kills his wife and his kid
and his cat.
and their cat. R.I.P. to a real one.
Bastard.
So they because Kayako was infatuated with Toshio's teacher, and basically Takeo finds this. He gets really upset. He murders Kayako and hides her in the attic. And the Grudge is basically born out of that because before all three of the movies, you get a little text card that talks about how the Grudge is born out of an act of violence committed by someone that was enraged, and whoever is even near the curse gets touched by it, and then it spreads like that. And all these movies are basically watching that happen because you can't stop it. It's just part of that house now where the murder took place.
A cycle of violence.
Yeah, it's a cycle of death and disappearance. And so he kills Kayako, and then what ends up happening is then he kills I can't remember the name of the teacher in the curse. I think it was Kobayashi, but I'm not sure. It was something with a K. I remember that. And so he has a pregnant wife. Takeo goes and kills that pregnant wife and takes the unborn fetus, and then calls. I'm just gonna call him Mr. K from a payphone, and basically tells him, "Hey, your wife's dead, haha," in more or less words. But then Takeo meets his end because Kayako kills him. Just like she does everybody else, because it's again that cycle of rage that continues through all these different people. It's like a rock hit the ground and just all those ripples just keep going out, or hit a lake, not the ground. All these ripples affect all these different things, and that's really the only backstory you really need before you watch The Grudge. But like The Grudge doesn't need that. I think The Grudge holds up. In fact, I think it would be more enthralling to watch it not knowing the origin, just knowing that something terrible happened, and then putting the pieces together yourself.
Yeah, because the police briefly mentioned the incident when they're interviewing Rika.
Yeah.
So you find out what is the origin anyway. It's just Curse 1 and 2 are more padding to the origin.
Yeah, and I guess I told Justin before he watched it that it's like a precursor, but also kind of but The Grudge is also kind of a remake in a sense. But I think that plays more into the themes of that the cycle repeats itself over and over again, and that's the point, is that this horrible thing happened, excuse me, and it keeps repeating because it's like a stain, I think is probably the best way to describe it, that's left on this house, and then, it wreaks havoc in Japan. But yeah, I would say, I think it's fair to say that you think The Grudge holds up better than The Curse and The Curse 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be inclined to agree. There's a reason that The Grudge is remembered and The Curse 1 and 2 really aren't. Because The Curse 1 and 2 feels like Takashi kind of like figuring out what he like kind of getting his footing with the ideas that he has, and I feel like The Grudge is those ideas becoming more coherent and coming to fruition, and I appreciate it quite a bit. Yeah. I think that these movies are very effective for a number of different reasons. I think me and Justin can both agree on that they're very creepy is the main thing. It doesn't... So there's commentary for Ju-on that is between Sam Raimi and Scott Spiegel, and the whole commentary track is basically them gushing about the movie and talking about how it was like nothing they had ever seen before, because, it doesn't really rely on jump scares. It's more about stuff in the background, and it's very subtle. There are a couple of times where you get like a musical swell for like certain scenes, but it's never like, you don't get that loud bang that you get in like an American movie with jump scares.
And it's not even really like a pop-up thing. It's kind of like a slow transition, and the ghost is just making a face, so the music just emphasizes that.
Yeah, and it's never, and like I said, it's never like something like The Crazies, where it's just like this loud noise with the music, and it just feels unnecessary and kind of annoying. And I don't know why American horror movies are like that. I mean,
Was that one transition in H2O where it just made that loud jump scare and then it's at a party?
I've probably I don't
Yeah.
remember
I
H2O.
just
I'm gonna
remember
be
that
real.
specific part where we were like, why was that necessary to have a jump scare there?
Oh yeah. I think I know what you're talking about. I mean, I mean, you have movies like Scream will kind of play with the expectations of a jump scare. You have other movies that'll play on the anticipation of a jump scare to make it more scary. Kale went to go see Skinamarink, which is basically an art project, but made by a guy that likes horror. I mean, that's a very simplistic way to describe it, but it's a very inaccessible film. It's very niche. That is a word, Josh. And so it's I'm sorry. That's an in joke between me and Justin. It's very niche and it's very like for a specific type of audience. It's like a nightmare, and that movie kind of plays on the anticipation of a jump scare, and it has jump scares, and they feel earned. They don't feel. This is what I've heard. I haven't seen the movie yet, but like Kale was telling me that they feel earned, and they feel like it's not obnoxious. And that's what I like in my horror movies, more or less. Our favorite slashers have stupid jump scares in them. It just kind of comes with the territory. Like even Scream has jump scares, Evil Dead has jump scares, like that's nothing new. But it's how the jump scares are executed that I think is important. And yeah, this movie has jump scares, but they aren't obnoxious like American horror movies typically have. Another difference,
And it doesn't rely on them either.
it doesn't rely on them at all. No. It relies more on stuff in the background, and it's more about atmosphere and aesthetic more than anything else. I do want to say one thing about The Curse 1 and 2 that I do appreciate is that because they're shot on video, and because they were released on home video, they kind of have this grainy aesthetic to them that kind of makes it feel like a found footage movie.
Yeah.
It feels like a home movie, and that makes it a little bit scarier in the same sense that, like, I remember when we covered Rob Zombie's Halloween, and one of the things he pointed out was that seeing the nurse get killed by Michael on grainy CCTV footage is horrifying because it reminds you of an actual like death happening on CCTV footage. And it's kind of the same thing with the Curse 1 and 2, where this grainy aesthetic really complements it, I think. And that's one of the things I really liked about the Curse 1 and 2. But for the most part, they follow the same formula in the sense of what's going to be creepy and what's going to be scary. It's a lot of stuff in the background. Kayako and Toshio are kind of just lurking, and you never know when they're coming. The noises that Toshio makes, or he sounds like a feral cat, and it's disturbing.
Just famously known sounds.
Yeah, and then Kayako, does her little. I can't do it. I'm going to embarrass myself, but I can't do it. I can normally do it, and then when I'm trying to do it for this, I can't do it. But yeah, it's the little like death rattle in the back of your throat.
Now that I've like heard that sound again, I'm just remembering specifically when I was in 5th grade. Everyone was obsessed with making that sound in class.
So funny thing about that sound, you know what the sound is. We all know what the sound is. Funny thing about that sound. I used to make that sound when I was a kid. Didn't know it was from The Grudge or anything, but I used to make that sound. And I remember I had one classmate that was very upset with me because she said it reminded her of The Grudge. And mind you, I was like 6 or 7. I was about 7 or 8, actually. Yeah, that makes sense. And I was like, "Why are you watching The Grudge?" You're like, we're like under 10. Why would you? Who showed you this? And so, but yeah, that noise was apparently a noise that Shimizu used to make around his parents to annoy them. And then when he did it for the producer to say like, "This is the noise Kayako is gonna make," the producer was like, "That's not scary," and he's like, "Oh, it will be." And he's right. It's pretty fucking scary.
Yeah.
It's mixed really well. We watched it on 4K, the Arrow release, and it's got surround sound and like. Excuse me. One thing that I really appreciated is that I like it when a horror movie makes good use of all the speakers, and like I think there was one point where like the noise was like rotating around us in the room, and it's very cool when stuff like that happens. I like it adds to the immersion and everything. So sound design is a very crucial part of this film, and I think that's part of what makes it work so well. But like Justin said, it doesn't really rely on jump scares. It's very subtle. very in the background stuff. It kind of watching this kind of made me feel the same way that I felt when I saw John Carpenter's Halloween for the first time, where I was constantly looking in the background to see where Michael was. And just like with this, I'm constantly looking in the background to see if Toshio is going to show up or Kayako is going to show up or something. And that, I think that's the best thing that these movies have going for them. And I would be inclined to think that Justin would agree with that.
Yeah. Another thing I appreciated about these movies, the acting. It was pretty genuine when they were afraid. And they just, I don't know if it's just a thing with Japanese people and how they act in their movies, because I haven't seen a lot of Japanese movies, but they just seem like normal people. Like you said, the whole home video aesthetic, it makes it seem
so
more
you mean
like
the acting feels very natural. Yeah. I know what you mean. Because the detective, the old detective in the Grudge, that they find because he worked on the case of Takeo murdering his family. His reaction when he goes into the house and he sees that vision of his daughter and what she went through in the house, and then when he sees Kayako coming for him, his reaction is so fucking like authentic that you would think that the director was running at this man with a fucking knife ready to kill him, because the thing is, when you're scared, like a lot of American movies, I feel like, I love B movies. I love that they're cheesy and stuff, but like a lot of the way people act scared in that isn't authentic, because this dude's babbling like a fucking baby, which is what you would be doing if you saw that. If you saw something that otherworldly, you would resort to a child and start acting like that. And I love that. That's one of my favorite scenes in the movie, is him just running because he's so afraid.
It's that, or you'll just be stunned in place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing too, is that I like that part too, when people get kind of afflicted by the curse and they just kind of sit there and like kind of have this blank expression on their face. It's creepy
because everyone's sitting there being like, "Oh, I would just run." It's like, have you ever like really been truly scared?
Yeah, you're gonna be in fear. It's fight or flight, and sometimes you don't get any of them.
Like specific one time, I remember this happened to me. I was like playing in a little ditch where like the sewer comes out, and I was near the water, and I just see this reflection of this big ass snake coming right towards me.
Oh boy.
And I literally was just stuck. Like I could not move.
Yeah.
It was, every part of me was saying go, but my body was like just stuck.
Yeah.
And you know what that's like too, if you've ever had like night terrors or really bad nightmares.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a very you never know until you're in the moment. Like, it's easy to see it and be like, oh, I would have done that differently. I'm built different or whatever. But no, you're not. If you went through it, it would probably end up the same way. One thing I also want to touch on with the acting is that this movie comes with an English dub, and it's awful. Also, I want to point out that Sam Raimi and Scott Spiegel explicitly say that it's awful. And Sam Raimi brings up a point about how, like, it's weird to see my movies dubbed. He's like, because I've seen like Evil Dead dubbed in Japanese and stuff. He's like, but I feel like when you dub something, it takes away from the original performance, which is why I usually like to watch things in the language that they were filmed in. So like with High Tension, we watched it in French and everything, because I felt like I mean, it's not like the voice actors aren't doing a great job. It's just that like there's a mismatch to me, and it's hard to wrap my head around. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because it's like sometimes when they talked in The Grudge, they say one word and it comes out as two subtitles.
Yeah,
like,
and then and there is a charm to it. Like with me and Justin grew up watching Godzilla movies and all those kaiju films, and they were all dubbed in English because they were on VHS. And that's just how they were made when we watched them. And, there's a charm to that. But, like, for something like this, I think it takes away from it when you're trying to be scary. Another thing I wanted to talk about.
You can't dub over fear.
Oh, no. You can't. Absolutely not. Yeah. But speaking of the scary stuff, I wanted to talk about Shimizu in an interview on the Blu-ray. He was talking about how... that like American movies, at least when he was growing up, he didn't really watch horror movies until he was a teenager, and it was after he was coaxed into going by a couple of his friends to watch Friday the 13th Part 2 and 3. I think it was like a double feature at a theater or something. And they go and like, he said that when he was watching it, he realized that it was more shocking than it was scary because, it's so violent. Like that's the thing with American movies is they're very violent. They're very bloody. They're very gory. And the whole point, and he said it was like they were just trying to shock you with all this gore and viscera and stuff. He's like, and Japanese audiences don't really go for that as much. He said that like in Japan, you don't really have to see Kayako kill somebody because the fact that you see her is the scary part. That's the part that works. And I mean,
her approach.
And her approach, yeah, which we'll talk about that in a little bit. But like for me, I mean, I love a good, I used to not really like gory movies, but now, they're fun. Like I don't really see a gore fest as scary so much as just like, oh, hey, those practical effects are neat. Like that's what I get out of it now is like, how the fuck did they do that? It's like watching a magic trick. That's what I kind of get out of those movies. But I don't think I've ever been like scared. Granted, there were a couple times during Evil Dead 2013, most recently, that made me squirm. There's a couple times in Cronenberg's films that make me squirm. But like, it's not like I'm scared. It's more like I'm cringing because I'm like, oh God, that's gross.
Wait till you get to Hostel.
Yeah. So I love that aspect about it. Like it's a different kind of like horror. And with this, it relies more on, the ghost is what's scary and seeing the ghost pop up and all that shit. And I mean, I like it when I see that in my American movies, That's what I like about John Carpenter's Halloween is it's very subtle, more or less. At least it's a lot more subtle than the fucking sequels. And I kind of like it when there's no reliance on jump scares. I like atmosphere a lot, all that stuff. The Thing doesn't really have any jump scares in the traditional sense, and that's my favorite horror movie of all time because it's like a perfect combination of the atmosphere, the fear, and then, the practical effects that I love so much. Mm-hmm. And so... But watching this, it's a very... I can understand why it wouldn't be everybody's cup of tea because, American audiences are pretty used to horror movies being shit like slashers. But I mean, obviously there's an audience for it in America, enough of an audience for it to get a remake and all that stuff. But I don't know. I would say that this is scary, whereas like your typical slasher is just fun. I don't know. Like it's weird to call a movie where people get murdered in mass fun, but like it is. I don't know how to describe it.
Its idea of a haunting and curse seems more realistic than most American takes on a haunting or a curse. Like you look at Paranormal Activity, and that just everything in that movie just seems forced and doesn't seem like a natural occurring haunting that is just like it just looks like somebody looked up a bunch of fake prank haunting things or whatever and just spliced it into a movie.
Now, before you go on, I haven't seen Paranormal Activity in years, but was that a movie that relied on jump scares, you think?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's what I
figured.
figured.
Loud noise. Every time it would just be quiet, and then suddenly a noise would pop off, and then everyone is all in panic mode.
Yeah.
Something flies across the room, and panic again.
I remember that, okay.
Back to bed, next day.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then I also say the Grudge is realistic because every little instance that happened, like in like how you see the ghost and all that, I've been through shit like that. Like the house that I first remember living in, like not just me, my mom and my dad both saw shit like this, like just stuff running around the house out of the corner of their eyes, something standing right by their bed, something putting its hand over my face while I'm sleeping and there's nobody else around me. And it's like, that just felt really genuine what it would be like if a ghost was actually coming at you and trying to do stuff with you.
Yeah.
It didn't feel forced. You didn't expect to see the ghost when you did. Like how you didn't notice the first time when you watched Grudge that his reflection was in the door.
So I want to talk about this scene because this is my other favorite scene. There's a part where Rika, this is like after a majority. This is like towards the end of the movie.
I forgot we haven't described the plot yet.
Well, that's fine. It's a lot. I don't. but Rika is towards the end of the movie, and Rika is on the phone. and there's that part where the old man is like playing peekaboo with nobody, he's there's nobody there. And you might think, oh, he's just crazy. And then like another guy comes up and starts playing peekaboo with him because he's like looking out a window, and then the old man tells the guy to fuck off basically, and then he keeps playing peekaboo with nothing. And when I first watched it, I was like, oh, he's probably Toshio. He probably sees him because she's the curse. The curse has afflicted her, whatever. But there's a bit where she's walking this old man rolling him around in his wheelchair. And there's a bit where like a glass door opens and closes in front of them, and when it opens up, you get a glimpse of Toshio in the reflection, and then they come up and Toshio's not there, and I'm like, yo, that's so cool. That's fucking horrifying. That's so good. Like the little touches like that really make it work for me. And that's what I think that's why this is like, it makes you feel so uneasy. Like, obviously, on multiple rewatches, I'm not going to be like, whoa, I'm not going to, like, be scared.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be like, oh, I'm uneasy now. Like, it makes you feel, like, I think, what did you say that it made you feel like?
Like I kept feeling like something was behind me the entire time.
Yeah.
Like anytime I would move my head, I think I was going to see something. Like, it really set in that paranoid fear, which is effective. And not a lot of ghost movies that I've watched have given me that sense of like dread that something is actually going to pop up behind me.
No, yeah. And so people do die in this. That is something that happens. But it's not, the deaths aren't explicit. I think the most explicit it gets is in The Curse 1. There's a schoolgirl that gets killed by Kayako, and she gets like the lower half of her jaw ripped off, and her ghost is missing the jaw. Because whenever the grudge affects somebody, they basically become a ghost too, and then they're kind of forced to live out whatever happened to Kayako, I think, is the implication at the end of the Grudge, with Rika seeing herself as Kayako in all these different situations.
Yeah.
But I did want to talk about the design of the ghosts in this, because it's very good. So going back to stuff like Kuroneko and Onibaba, both of those, more Kuroneko than Onibaba deals with ghosts, but it's more like they're kind of demons. It's weird. I'd rather you just watch it, but like the way the ghosts were back then is, sometimes they'd be a little transparent. But most of the time it was just them in white makeup, but that was also a product of it being in black and white. Onibaba's more about like a curse or something. I don't remember exactly, and I don't really want to get into it because we're not covering that right now. But but those movies, or something like Kaidan, that's a good idea. Excuse me, Kaidan is a old J horror movie from the 60s, I believe, or maybe it was 1970. But that one's in color, and it's got two different. And the ghosts, it's like 4 ghost stories, because that's Kaidan translates to like ghost story roughly. And it's 4 ghost stories, and the ghosts in that are portrayed how they're portrayed here with white paint and everything. And it's surprisingly effective. Like you'd think it would look dumb, but nah, it looks good. It looks pretty good. So initially, what Shimizu wanted to do was he wanted to make it look like they were monochrome in color. So basically, it would be like, I feel like there was an episode of like the X-Files or some shit that did this, where people would like come out of a TV or something, and the picture would be black and white, and they'd come out black and white, and everything else is in color. That's basically what he wanted to do, but he didn't have the budget for that. So he was like, "Fuck it, we'll paint them white." He's like, I don't want to deal with anything else. But you do get a hint of that monochrome effect, and I think The Curse 2, when the social worker in that one goes to the apartment where Mr. K's wife was killed by Takeo, and like she sees this vision of him murdering her, and it's like, it looks like it's from a TV, like it's real grainy and shitty looking, and so he still got that effect in one of the movies, but like Kayako and Toshio are just painted white, And Toshio has these big eyes that he looks at you with, and Kayako too. Actually, they both have very big eyes.
The insides of their mouths are black.
Yeah, and the insides of their mouths are black. And Kayako is typically covered in blood when you see her. At least when Rika sees her, she's covered in blood. And Kayako is played in every single Grudge movie, including the American ones, by, what was her name? Takako Fuji. She has played Kayako in Ju-on the Curse 1 and 2, Ju-on the Grudge 1 and 2, the American Grudge 1 and 2, and that's it. She didn't play Kayako in the Grudge 3 or Grudges or the reboot movies in Japan. But she's been playing the character. She was playing the character pretty much before that. And she's very good. She is very good. It's like Justin said, all the acting is very natural and good in this movie. But I think Kayako's movements are so like gross. Like she moves like a slug person. If a slug person had limbs, that's the best way I can describe it.
It's like what's that character's name on Killer Instinct?
Yeah, that's the same kind of ghost.
Like,
so,
like if you've ever played that game and seen the character I'm talking about and know how she moves and how it sounds when she moves, that's basically the sound that Kayako makes when she moves, just at a slower pace.
Yeah, what's the name of... I'm trying to remember the type of ghost that they are. It's
Henri.
Henri?
I think.
It's like Onryo, I think. Yeah, it translates to vengeful spirit, sometimes rendered wrathful spirits or hatred spirits. They're a type of ghost, which is a yuri, believed to be capable of causing harm in the world of the living, injuring or killing enemies, or even causing natural disasters to exact vengeance, to redress the wrongs it's received while alive, then taking their spirits from their dying bodies. Onryo? I don't know how to... I don't know. I'm probably butchering that, but that's the type of ghost that Kayako and Toshio are. Specifically Kayako. Kayako is the one that mainly does all the killing. I feel like Toshio is more of like an alarm. Like he kind of just alerts Kayako to somebody's presence.
Here now. So
yeah, somebody's here. And I think in the Curse, another sequence I really like from the Curse is the one when Mr. K is going up to see Toshio, and Toshio's drawing and he's talking to Kayako. And he's like, "Why do you keep going away, Mom? Like, why do you keep doing that?" And then Kayako's like, "I'll always be with you." And then Toshio's like, "But why do you keep disappearing? Like, I look away and then you're gone." And I'm just like, "That's fucking scary. I don't like that. I don't like this anymore." But yes, Kayako moves like as if every bone in her body is broken, and I don't like it's so cool. And then she just makes that noise that's so gross and disturbing.
Oh, I finally thought of a way to describe the sound. Like when you're first undoing a bendy straw. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it sounds like that. And like I also at the end of The Grudge, when she's coming up on Rika, and you hear like these warped and distorted like almost like cries, almost like a plea for like help me, and it's so fucking
she reaches
scary.
her hand out
And it's so fucking scary. Oh my god, I hate it. It's so good. Yeah, but yeah, he was like, just paint them white, whatever, it's fine, it'll work, and it works very well, I think.
White and gray.
And yeah, it's an iconic look for sure, and you know, you have that character in Killer Instinct that's heavily inspired by Kayako, or just that type of spirit, and then you have that same type of spirit is in Phasmophobia. If you play that, I'm a giant piss baby. I stay in the van. That's why I don't play it anymore. So you know, so the legacy of The Grudge is a far-reaching one, because I think it really kind of brought that spirit, that type of ghost, into like the public consciousness, at least in the 21st century.
Dead by Daylight also?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I think there's a character in Dead by Daylight based on that too. Yeah, ghosts are scary. I don't like them. But yeah, these movies, from what I've heard, a lot of the other movies kind of like repeat themselves, but I think that plays into the themes of the story. Excuse me. So I don't really mind that too much. I mean, and I mean, we love Halloween, and that's the same shit every time. So it's like
There's only so much you can do.
there's only so much you can do with a creepy ghost story,
But it's
and
how effective you make it.
and if you can make it scarier and scarier, and I'm all for it. And that's how it already felt between the Curse and the Grudge. Is the Curse was all right, but the Grudge is like like a significant step up.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's very good. I think it's a very good piece of J horror. I do want to talk about how the story's told. It's told in a somewhat non-linear fashion. It kind of has like a cold open focusing on who comes to be the main character, Rika, of her visiting this elderly woman, who you later find out is the mother of, I think, the son that lives there with his wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the mother of the son that lives there with his wife, and she's like really old, her hair's all gray, but she's like not talking. Like, and that alone is creepy enough. Just the fact that she's just sitting there, not doing anything, like just existing, and it's fucking creepy. And Rika eventually finds her way around seeing Toshio, and then she's like, "Oh, what the fuck?" Like,
she goes in
why is there a kid here?
Yeah, the closet's taped up, and
Yeah.
she untapes it and like looks in and says, "Oh, there's just a cat." But then she does like a little double take.
A
and
very
then,
good camera shot, I want to say.
Oh yeah, no, it's like, what did you say? A slow little pan back over to where the cat was. And it's Toshio.
Yeah, it's a very cool camera movement. I think Scott Spiegel and Sam Raimi were both like, "That's very Evil Dead."
And it didn't rely on a noise either. It relied on Rika's actress jumping to that and noticing.
And even the ending of the movie, where because we watched Evil Dead 2013, and like the end, there's an alternate ending to that where at least I think in the director's cut, the ending is the camera zooming in on Mia's face as she's sleeping, and then her eyes open, and you get that bong, that fucking jump scare. And in this movie, you don't get that. It's zooming in on Rika, and she opens her eyes, and then it's just the noise, and that's all you need. I don't understand why all these fucking American studios are like, "Oh, we gotta have jump scares," because like. I wanted to touch on this because you were talking about how a ghost story is told in America, but compared to Japan. So, like, even something like Kaidan, a movie that came out like 50 fucking years ago, it's not scary, but it's very unsettling. There's a story of like a samurai that leaves for war and comes back, and his wife is gone, but like she's a ghost now, or I think her hair is still there or something. I don't remember exactly, but that makes me uneasy. The best story is one where there's this woman that the samurai meets like in like a snowy forest that takes him in, and she's like, "I'll be your wife" or whatever, but then she ends up being a spirit, and like her design and overall look is horrifying. Japanese horror has always been more about like I think it's like Shimizu said, it's more about what you see as opposed to like a death, because I think he said something about how in America, the crime rate is so high, murders happen all the time, you have mass shootings, you have stuff like that. He's like, so I think the reason American movies are so violent and visceral is because there's a legitimate fear of getting murdered in America. He's like, I think that's kind of where slashers were born out of, was this, because you have like serial killers in America, very notorious serial killers in America. And he's like, and I think it was kind of born out of that. He's like, in Japan, it's a lot of folklore, a lot of ghost stories. He's like, so I think that's what we find scary. And so like something like Onibaba, again, it's the imagery of this like spirit or this specter that's fucking scary, not really the visceral like image of somebody dying, you know what I mean? And for some reason in America, they're like, well, we have to keep the shock there, because like, when you're watching Friday the 13th, it's shocking when you see a fucking arrow go through Kevin Bacon's neck and he bleeds out and chokes on his own blood and shit. It's shocking, when he crushes somebody's fucking head. It's shocking when he takes a woman, dunks her head in liquid nitrogen, and then smashes her fucking face against the table.
That was more funny.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. But
Yeah.
like, if you're a kid, that's like, whoa. It was shocking to me when I saw The Thing for the first time, and I saw old boy's head being pulled off and fucking growing spider legs. That's shocking. Like, that's the whole thing. But you know, and it's like, well, we got to keep that. We got to keep that even though it's a fucking ghost story. So you either have ghosts that kill people or you have ghosts that do obnoxious jump scares like in La Llorona or The Conjuring or fucking whatever. And it's annoying. I don't like it. I like the subtlety because I feel like a ghost story revels in the quiet and what isn't shown and what isn't said. I feel like it revels in that.
These movies make their own atmosphere too. Like there's no music throughout. I mean, there's little bits of music here and there, but they don't interrupt anything. It's just when it's necessary, it's there.
And then like and then like all the like there's sudden things that happen, but they aren't shocking because of a fucking noise that's literally engineered to make you jump. You know, like for instance, when the sister gets taken in her bed, and like there's that shot of just the bed swelling because there's something under the covers. That's fucking scary. That would scare the shit out of me if I was just chilling with somebody and I'm like, bro, there's something under the fucking bro. You get like, I would be horrifying. That'd be scary.
It's like when you don't know your cat's in your room and they crawl up under your blankets instead of just jumping on the bed. My cat did that to me once. That scared the shit out of me. I was so freaked out.
Like George will jump on the bed and like it freaks me out because sometimes I'll feel him jump up and then he's not there. but like George will jump on the bed and like that's scary enough sometimes if I'm like asleep. But like shit, the idea of a ghost just like coming under the covers and just taking you, that's horrifying, man. And like when the people die, they just kind of disappear. Like they don't really, nothing bloody happens.
Yeah.
Nothing gory. And again, it's like
dying in Phasmophobia.
Yeah, it's
you
like,
hear the noise, you see the ghost hands, and then done.
Yeah, and it's like in America, they're like, well, we got to keep the shock, we got to keep the jump scares, we got to do this, we got to do that, and I don't like that. I think it takes away from it more than anything. That's why nobody fucking likes ghost stories in America because they're boring
and they're all done the same.
Jump scares get fucking boring.
And I'm not saying that there's not good ghost American movies. Like I like a select few, but I'm not the hugest fan of ghost movies.
I'm sure I like some. I just can't think of them right now.
Like Sinister is good.
I've heard good things about Sinister. Yeah.
Grave Encounters for what it was, I liked it.
Grave Encounters is like really schlocky, and I think that's why I like it so much. I remember the first time I watched that shit, and I was like, "That's kind of goofy." I like it. Like it's, and then like the fact that the effects look fake kind of add to it. I don't know why.
There was
just,
one I can't
it's just so
remember
goofy.
the name. There was one. I don't think it was necessarily ghost in this movie, but I can't remember what it was. It was a Spanish movie, but it was good at what it did too.
Speaking of Spanish movies, there's La Llorona. Not the shitty one that they made in America with Tuco from Breaking Bad. This is one that was from South America specifically, but that one plays more like a political statement on dictatorships and war crimes than it does a ghost story. But like the ghost stuff in that isn't very like, it's not jump scares. Like it's just unsettling again, because that's the thing about ghosts is it's unsettling. It's not like you don't have to fucking have a jump scare to make me scared of it. I don't understand it. I'm trying. I know there's a ghost, like there's some ghost movie in America that I know I probably like, but I just cannot for the life of me think of one right now. Like I'm sure it's there, and I'm sure I'm gonna remember as soon as I fucking turn the stop recording.
Oh, another one, Dead Silence. I mean, but that one relies on all the stupid American tropes, but I liked it.
That's the one with the dolls, right?
Yeah, the puppets.
Yeah, the puppets. Yeah, with old Slappy, that fucking Slappy looking puppet. That's James Wan, though. I've heard good things about that, just because it's James Wan. But
I mean, it's effective in what it does.
Yeah,
and you get the little saw twist.
you can't have it without a Saw twist, you know. But like I guess I guess what really scares me is shit like Silent Hill and stuff like that, where it's like it's just this atmosphere that's so fucking unsettling, and I don't know. That's why I think The Grudge is so effective. Excuse me, because it's that atmosphere, you know. But yeah, it's I just hate American tropes like that with because as Shimizu was talking, I was like, he's right about a lot of this, man. Like it's all about the violence. It's all about that. Like, when's the last time you watched a slasher where the killer was scary on his own without just brutally murdering somebody? You know, I think. I remember when we covered Rob Zombie's Halloween, that's one thing I talked about was how imposing Michael was and how he was horrifying because it's just this fucking giant dude. And like, you know, so that's one example I can think of, but like in recent years, I mean, I guess Jason's scary for a little bit, but like after like the fifth movie, it's kind of like, oh, okay, well, it's
The
just
Creeper.
just a guy in a hockey mask. Like you talking about Scooby Doo Creeper or
No,
Jeepers Creepers?
Jeepers Creepers.
Jeepers Creepers.
I mean, he's scary on his own even before you figure out what he does.
Yeah, xenomorphs are scary on their own too because they're little creepy crawlies. A lot of people don't like spiders. I don't mind spiders. Spiders are all right with me, but I don't really get that arachnophobia that people tend to get with bug stuff like that.
Ask Josh.
Yeah, I'm sure
He's terrified of spiders.
Yeah, and grape flavored things. Can't forget about that. Imagine a grape flavored spider; it'd drive him crazy. But yeah, no, I think stuff like Silent Hill and stuff like that is what makes me scared. It's the fear of the unknown. I think is what makes ghosts so scary because you don't know what they're gonna do. You don't know if they're just gonna hang out. You don't know if they're gonna try to hurt you. You know, you don't know. And
That's another thing too. Most American ghost stories rely on the one trope of like a poltergeist. That's what most of the movies ghosts are.
define a poltergeist for me because I've heard a bunch of different definitions.
I think it's just specifically one that just lingers in one spot and just messes with the environment around it, all that, and just does that.
Yeah.
But they all do the same thing. Oh, cabinets are closed 1 second and now they're open.
Yeah.
And then chairs are stacked up. Like almost every single ghost movie from America that I've seen does that.
Yeah.
Aside from like Sinister, Conjuring, they have a good few moments. But yeah, like nobody really wants to step towards the other types of ghost or even realize that there are types of ghosts.
Yeah. See, like La Llorona. Now I got a history with La Llorona, but La Llorona is a spooky. Listen, I'm gonna tell you a story. All right, when I was a kid, I remember my mom bought me this book from a book fair or something we had at school called La Llorona, and if I remember right, it had some kind of audio element to it, and those cries haunted me for years to the point where like I don't like being around water sometimes, especially at night, because of that shit. And there was one time me and my buddy were outside. I don't live far from a river. I mean, I'm far enough, but like not too far, you know? And I remember me and my buddy were moving something off of the front porch one time, and we just hear crying. Like just crying. And it's dark. It's like 10 o'clock at night. It's fucking dark. And I look over to the house across the street, and there's just a shadow. Like, I just see a fucking silhouette and of a woman crying. And I'm just like, Isaac, I don't want to be here anymore. like, we're near a river. I don't like this at all. Like I think that's why crying in the dark makes me so nervous is because of shit like La Llorona.
That and the witch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Left for Dead.
Yeah. That's the scariest part about that game, man. But no, La Llorona has always frightened me. And like I don't need a jump scare for it to frighten me. It's just the idea of it is what's scary. And I think that's what these movies excel at. All three of them is the idea of it. Like you don't know, as soon as they walk into that fucking house, they're fucked. Like you know that. but you don't know when you're gonna see Kayako. You don't know when you're gonna see Toshio. You don't know any of that. And that's that fear of not knowing, I think, is what gets me.
Yeah.
And that's lacking in a lot of American horror, unfortunately.
And it's not like an instant death either. It follows you. It stays
It
with
follows you, and like we said earlier, the implication is that you relive what Kayako went through. Depending on, I think, just how the curse works.
Because the old detective's daughter, Izumi, her
Yeah, she
it
was
first
haunted.
caught her as a kid, and then it didn't get
Yeah.
her until she was a teenager.
Well, I looked that up. She was she had been on a school trip as a teenager, and what ended up happening was after, like, right before the detective dies, he because that part kind of confused me too. After you were like, so did she grow up or what? Like, but what ended up happening is her and her friends go to this house because it's like a haunted house. Ooh, we're gonna check it out. And her friends all get killed by Kayako, but not her. She runs away, and that's what the detective sees before he goes up the stairs and sees Kayako, and it gives that great performance of him freaking out. And then Kayako kills him because it follows him. So with Izumi, this is it's not a definite amount of time that's explained from when her friends disappear to when she's taken, but like I don't think it's like more than a month, probably a couple months, because I don't think she doesn't look that much older from the vision to when she's eventually taken. But what ends up haunting her is the student, the coworkers, the friends that she left behind because she was afraid. And so yeah, I think the grudge affects people differently. But in Rika's case, it was very much, oh, you're gonna go through what I went through, and that's why at the end she's stuffed in a bag in the attic like Kayako was in The Curse, because that's just her fate now. And now she's kind of doomed to live through Kayako, kind of. I'm assuming that's the implication, because Kayako doesn't go away in the sequels, or in the sequel, I guess, because I don't know how big of a part she is in White Ghost and Black Ghost, but yeah, so it's and that shit's scary too, like being doomed to fucking live through that shit. Fuck that.
Yeah.
Nah, man, I don't want that. Fuck. Takeo got what was coming to him.
That's
though,
like
I'm
why
gonna
I
be
think
honest.
even though everyone says past Hellraiser 3 everything sucks, that's why 5 is my favorite one, because that's the ending of it. That dude is just fucked to live through dying every single day in a different way.
Isn't that kind of what happens to Frank in the first one though, when he goes back to hell?
I think Frank just gets exploded.
He just gets ripped apart, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but that dude's fate, it was just every day he's gonna die in a different way, and he'll keep waking up in the same place.
Oh yeah, that's
and
rough.
just he doesn't know how or when or what time of day, but he's gonna die,
Yeah, that's rough.
and then just repeat it.
That's a fate worse than death. That reminds me of in Mortal Kombat 10, when after you beat the game and Raiden's all corrupted again because he can't help himself.
Yeah.
There's that part where he goes to Liu Kang and Katana, and he's like, "Hey, yeah, fucking back off. I don't want to have to kill y'all." And then he's like, "Actually, their fate's worse than death." And he throws fucking Shinnok's still alive head at him, and I'm just like, "Oh, that must suck." Just fucking being a head for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
It's like Reanimator. But it's so yeah, that's I don't think, I feel like there's more to talk about, but I gotta like sift through my notes for it. Is there anything else that you want to talk about while I'm looking? Anything else about the movies that really stuck out to you? Anything you didn't like? I mean, because I can't really think of anything I really didn't like. I just think
It's just more of the Curse 1 and 2 that didn't hit right. 'Cause
Yeah.
they were just kind of confusing and a little weird at times.
yeah.
This one, the Grudge, kind of has a more easier path to follow.
To add on to what you said about how everything feels kind of like real in The Grudge, I think what adds to that is the fact that the house just looks like a house. It doesn't look gothic. It doesn't look like there's tons of American movies where like you look at the house and you're like, oh yeah, that shit's haunted,
Yeah.
you know. But like this is just a fucking house. Like it's just a regular house in Japan that doesn't have anything special about it. It's just, and that's I think that's part of what makes it scary too. Is like you think about how many people died in my house, you know? How many people died in, well, your house was recently built, but how many people died where your house stands, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's that idea where like you don't even know, you know? And that's kind of fucking scary in itself, just to think about that. But let me see. There's Sam and Scott Spiegel talking about how they like that there aren't any jump scares because they have taste. One thing I wanted to point out too is that Sam Raimi says he's a big fucking baby like me, and he didn't want to watch the movie at 2 a.m. like Scott Spiegel did. Because Scott was like, yeah, the first time I watched this, he's like, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. I turned all the lights off. He's like, and I was fucking mortified. And Sam Raimi's like, yeah, you see, I'm too much of a coward. And he's like, I'm not gonna do that. And he's like, I'm not. He's like, I watched it during the day at a screening room. He's like, I didn't do all that.
It's funny you bring up Raimi because I was watching Supernatural and Ted Raimi's in an episode.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
My girlfriend wanted me to watch it with her.
Well, that's unfortunate. Anyway, so
I mean,
think
it's an all right show. Just the joke episodes are really annoying and they get in the way.
I mean, I've heard the Scooby-Doo one's fun.
I mean, I haven't got there yet, but like in between all the serious moments, you'll get just a random stupid joke episode where like they're in some alternate world where like Dean's a fucking CEO and Sam is just some little pencil pusher desk jockey.
Well, when you got 23 episode seasons, I guess that's how you keep it fresh.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were hyping up the remake for The Grudge a lot, so I think the commentary was recorded before before the remake was made, because Sam Raimi and Scott Spiegel produced that remake, and Shimizu directed Grudge 1 and 2. The American remakes, which is very interesting because a lot of remakes of foreign movies don't really get the same director. Sam Raimi kept calling DVDs laser discs. He kept referring to it as he kept referring to the DVD as the laser disc. So that's how you know he's a product of his time. But let me see. I think everything else I've already talked about in some...
Oh, Scary Movie parody to this.
They parodied The Ring, too. Yeah, they parody everything. Isn't that crazy?
I think it was Scary Movie 4 that did it.
Oh, boy. Also, Toshio is played by a different character in every movie for obvious reasons.
A different kid?
Yeah.
You said character.
Yeah, I know what I said. The guy that plays Takeo, I think, is the only one that plays him throughout the entire franchise, except the reboots in Japan. But he's the only one that plays him throughout the not the reboot, but Black Ghost, White Ghost, all the American movies. So yeah, I mentioned the stuff about Kayako. Takako Fuji, who played Kayako, was dubbed the voice of Rose in Titanic, Liv Tyler's character in Armageddon, and she also dubbed over Toni Collette's roles in Hereditary and Nightmare Alley, which is pretty neat that she was the voice of Toni Collette in Hereditary, because I could 100% kind of picture that. Hereditary is another one of those movies that I feel relies a lot on making you unsettled. And I appreciate it for that. Yeah. That's an example of an American movie. There we go. Hereditary. That's an example of an American kind of not really ghost movie that is effective and doesn't really rely on fucking shit-ass jump scares. So good. And then let me see.
Wasn't there like a part like early in the beginning, if you pay attention close enough, you can see the cultists like early?
Probably.
Because it was like an outside view of the house and there's like a subtle flash and you see everyone standing around the house naked, and then I think that scene repeats later. I just like saw a video and it showed that scene.
I think I remember towards the end you can spot them in the bushes and shit, but like.
But they said at the beginning also you could see them if you like adjust the brightness a little bit.
Huh? But there's plenty of shit in that movie that's like again in the background.
Yeah.
And you're like, there's that fucking part where it's in the kid's room. And you just see Toni Collette just like in the fucking corner of the ceiling, and and I remember Kale said when he saw it in theaters, he's like, it was great because you could tell when everybody in the audience realized where she was, and I'm just like, oh, it's so good. A lot of people thought that the inspiration for Kayako, at least for Fuji, came from a type of dancer in Japan that has movements very similar to Kayako. But Shimizu was inspired by that, but Fuji wasn't. So she said, I didn't really get inspiration from anything. She's like, Shimizu just told me what he wanted, and that's what I did. That's a good actress. So let me see what else. Talked about Ringu. Talked about the TV show. Yeah. So there's a lot of black cats in these movies. The main one being the cat that Takeo murders. Because it won't stop crying because he killed Kayako. The thing about that is that it's, again, Western media influencing Japanese culture, because black cats aren't really anything in Japan. They aren't considered bad luck or anything like they are in America. There's no superstition regarding black cats. Apparently, calico cats are the ones to look out for in Japan, but in America, it's black cats. So that's why it's a black cat in The Grudge. He said that's why I did that. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was pretty cool. Also, apparently in Japan, cats aren't usually kept indoors because of the material that's used to construct the houses. It's a type of like paper or something that a cat will just rip through.
Yeah. I could see that.
So, because as we know, cats are something else. So this kind of plays into what you were talking about. Shimizu wanted to use locations in the movie that the average person would visit. He wanted people in Japan specifically to think, wow, this could happen to me or my neighbor. And that's kind of the vibe you get from the movie.
Yeah.
That's why it feels so like, it feels so grounded, despite it being a ghost story. Talked about the murder thing, talked about the blood and guts. Shimizu obviously thinks Evil Dead is one of the best horror movies ever. Excuse me, which is completely fair. The actress that played Rika said that the house, because they filmed the movie in a real house, so they had limitations on how they could shoot certain scenes. And the actress that played Rika was like, it was already unsettling enough, but then you'd see Fuji come out in her Kayako makeup, and it'd be a little more unsettling. And she's like, she's like, but I always kind of felt like weird on set. She talked about how she had a bunch of paranormal experiences. One instance is where she felt paralyzed and saw a woman in a white kimono and a small girl jumping on her bed, which sounds horrifying.
Yeah.
They talked about Shimizu, and so the original ending this had an alternate ending, and it was gonna be where it was gonna show more about what Takeo did to Kayako, and how like he didn't kill her right away. He kind of left her to suffer. But Shimizu cut a lot of it because he felt that it fucked up the pacing of the movie. And he also felt that it wasn't really scary. It was just kind of, like, oh, look at what's going on,
the unknown is scarier than what is
known. And that's something I feel like we've talked about a lot, is that the unknown is what makes it scary. Like when it comes to like Michael's motives and shit like that in the Halloween franchise, and then like not knowing everything about the Deadites and Evil Dead, stuff like that. But, it's, these movies are pretty good. I'm excited to see what comes next. I don't know how well the rest of it's going to hold up because, like I said, there's only so much you can do with creepy ghost stuff. But, we'll see. I can't really think of anything else I want to talk about with these movies. Is there anything you wanted to talk about before we spin the wheel for the next week's episode?
I think we covered all our bases.
So,
and again, we're sorry for not fully describing the plot, but it's like 3 different stories combined into one thing towards the end.
Yeah, it's a lot of
plus it's harder to remember because we had to read all the subtitles.
Well, yeah, but it's a lot of jumping around. It's, like I said, it's non-linear. Although the only thing that's really out of order is just that first scene and then the rest of it kind of plays in order. But like they're all little vignettes that kind of and that's the thing about this movie too is that like. Well, The Curse 1 and 2 and The Grudge is that they can all these little shorts can be short movies in themselves because they all kind of have a climax, and that's usually when you see Kayako. But they all kind of interweave at one point or another, and that's a neat way to tell a ghost story, I think. I think it kind of harkens back to telling ghost stories like around a campfire or something like that. The Fog, that's another one. That's another one that's a very good ghost story because that's all about atmosphere. That's Carpenter, so that's all about atmosphere. But yeah, it kind of harkens back to that, like just telling ghost stories with your buddies or whatever. I don't personally have any ghost stories. I don't think anything has really happened to me that I couldn't just explain away. Yeah, I don't think I really have anything like that. Do you have any more, Justin, based on outside of what you already said?
Being dumb and trying like a summoning game.
All right.
Like that. I'm not saying it worked and I'm not saying it didn't work, but for an entire week I had the most realistically painful nightmares I've ever had.
That's crazy.
And it really felt like everything that was happening in those dreams was happening to me. Like I would wake up tired and exhausted after all of that.
All right, here's a real question though.
Yeah.
Would you live in this house?
Part of me is like yes, and the other part's no. Because I just have a sick curiosity to these things. Like I want to experience it. I want it to happen, but at the same time, I don't want it to happen.
I think you're good. Yeah, once you see Kayako coming down them stairs, I think
okay, I'm good. Thank you.
I think your mind's gonna change. Oh, yep, that's what I needed to see. Thank you. I will not come back, but it's too bad because Kayako's gonna follow you. And yeah, that's very scary. The idea of it following you, I think, is what gets me the most because it's like if you even like get a whiff of it, you're fucked, and there's nothing you can do about it. I guess that's kind of like Ringu because it's the you'll die in 7 days type shit. But and I think it was Sam Raimi that was talking about how like normally when there's cops in a movie, you're meant to feel safe, but like even in this movie, you don't. Like, you still feel like, oh, man, they're in there now. Now they're going to fucking die.
They get got, too.
And then they get got, yeah. And, I mean, that's something that's explored in American movies from time to time. Especially slashers, where a cop will show up and, nothing will happen because the cop gets murdered very brutally sometimes. Depends on the movie. But, but just playing with that expectation is, like, very... very clever. But yeah, these are good movies. I like them a lot. I'm glad we're doing this franchise. I kind of wanted to, I mean, I would have been excited to do Hatchet too. But I'm kind of glad we're getting these out of the way just because this feels like it's going to be a fun franchise. Cut to a few episodes down the line when I'm like, wow, it's the same thing. I'm tired. I'm going to yawn.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that's everything that we have to say about The Curse 1 and 2
and The Grudge
and Le Grudge. I wonder how much the American version is going to differ. But I guess we'll find out when we get to it. That's a little ways away. But anyway, Justin, are you ready to see what our next movie is going to be? So I added a couple of movies. Well, I added really just one. I think I just added... Well, I added Happy Death Day in the second one, and then I added Ready or Not. Because Ready or Not's like more of a horror comedy, but it's very fun. Had a lot of fun watching that one. I watched that one recently because I'm on the hype train for Scream 6. So, and then I also watched Dr. Sleep, which I don't think we're going to cover. I feel like we probably could, but it's also 3 hours long. And it's a sequel to The Shining, which I also don't know if we're ever going to cover just because, like, yeah, it's a horror movie, but, like, it's weird. Like, I don't know. It's not... Yeah, it's not something that I feel like would fit on the podcast. But Dr. Sleep's a little more I feel viable. But me being me, I talk about The Shining for about an hour before we even talked about Doctor Sleep.
And I would just be like, I didn't like this movie.
You might like Doctor Sleep. I don't know. I mean, it's good. It's just, it's one of those movies that has horror, but it's not. It's like not really a horror movie though. Like it's more of like, it's hard to explain without you just watching it. But it's not. I wouldn't call it like a straight horror movie. It has horror elements, and it has some very
Psychological.
disturbing things that happen. But I mean, it's not like, it's kind of psychological. I can see that, but it's like, I think. The best way to describe it was how they described it on Red Letter Media, which is Danny Torrance grows up and fights vampires. That's what it. But like that sounds awful, right? But it's actually pretty good. It's actually pretty fucking good. But it's and there are some parts, there are some parts that are hard to watch. But I'd recommend it because I watched that one, but I haven't added it to the list because I don't know if I could justify talking about it on here because it'd be a lot to go over plot wise, even because it's fucking 3 hours long.
I mean, it's not even that I don't think The Shining is a good movie. It's just I don't think it's as great as everyone makes it out to be.
That's fair.
Like,
I mean, I love it, but yeah,
I mean, it's
fair.
enjoyable to watch one time, but after that, it's like, okay.
I never get tired of it. That's one of those movies that I can watch and time just kind of flies by. Like it's like 2.5 hours, I think, or maybe a little less, but it never feels like it. Like I remember one time when I got it on 4K, I was like, I want to see how it looks. So I played my favorite scene, which is the scene where Jack is chasing Wendy up the stairs, and he's like, and there's that part where like he's walking up the stairs and Wendy's swinging the bat, and he's just like he's kind of like being real confrontational, and there's that part where his voice just drops and he's like, Wendy, stop swinging the bat. Like he gets real serious, and I'm just like, ooh, like that's so haunting that he just like goes from angry to just like calm to just stop swinging the bat.
And I think my other issue with the movie is that it's been parodied so many times and so many things that I can't see itself for that. Like you describing that scene, I immediately just thought of The Simpsons.
Yeah, The Simpsons, I know. So it's but yeah, so I remember I put that scene on to see how it looked, and then I just ended up watching the rest of the fucking movie, and there was still like an hour, like 30 minutes to an hour left, and I just watched the whole. I didn't even realize I was watching it. I just got enveloped in it again. I love that movie, man. I don't know why. Like it's just I think I just like the scale of it. I don't know. But yeah, that's one of my favorites like ever. But Doctor Sleep's very good. It's it shouldn't work, but it does. I would highly recommend it if you haven't watched it because apparently nobody fucking saw it in theaters, including me. I'm guilty of that too. But I finally got around to watching it, and I think it's pretty great. So I would recommend Doctor Sleep and Ready or Not. Both of those movies are fantastic. Ready or Not is a very different movie, mind you, but I still found it very enjoyable. Samara Weaving is fantastic in it. But yeah, you ready to spin the wheel, Justin?
Spin it.
Oh, let's see what we're gonna get. We don't have Kale here to do a little music that he did last time.
Okay.
That doesn't work. No. What do we get? Our next movie's Ready or Not.
I guess it's like, are you ready or not?
That's funny. That's funny because I put 1 through 93 because there's 93 movies on this list now, and I'm over here hyping up Ready or Not. Well, you're about to hear us talk about it next week. So if you want to join us next week to talk about one of the funniest horror movies I've ever seen, then go ahead and give Ready or Not a watch, and we'll be here to talk about it next time. It's a very fun movie. I would highly recommend it to anybody. So I'll say this: it's not. When I say it's more of a horror comedy, it definitely has like horror trappings, but it's also like it's more. I feel like it's a comedy first, but it's a comedy first in the way that like An American Werewolf in London is a comedy first, because that movie's like very funny considering what it is. And Ready or Not kind of feels the same way. Very fun. Can't wait to talk about it. Can't wait to see what you think of it, because I think you'll like it a lot. You might find some of the characters annoying, and you might find them funny. I don't know. It's a coin flip.
We'll see.
It's a coin flip. But
If,
yeah, so we're
if I'm ready or not.
We're going to be talking about Ready or Not next week, baby. You know, it's funny, before we did this, I was like, even when I added it to the list, I'm like, wouldn't it be some shit if that's the next fucking movie we get? And that's the next fucking movie we get. Christ, 93. 90. What are the fucking odds? I guess 1 in 93. But like,
Yeah.
usually like, come on. Come on, man. I'm not upset. I'm just surprised. But all right, so next week, we will be covering Ready or Not. Super excited for that because this is a fantastic movie, as I've said about 3 times already. But yeah, The Grudge, a lot of fun. After we do Ready or Not, we'll go to The Grudge too. But yeah, so give Ready or Not a watch if you want to join us next time as we talk about it. We're probably going to go over the plot because that movie's only like 90 minutes long. So I know we didn't do that this time. But hey, at least I didn't yawn because that's what happens when we go over the plot sometimes. So you know. But yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for voting. By the way, I want to say that.
Yeah.
Thanks for voting for our franchise. I'm glad we have enough listeners to do something like that. Even if it was like how many people voted? Like
10.
Like 10 people. Yeah, those 10 people mean the world to me. Fuck it. Y'all are all my friends. I love you all. But yeah, thank you for voting. Thank you for listening and supporting us. Check us out on
Everything.
Facebook. Check me out on Twitter at Mustachio Cage. Check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It doesn't matter. Pick your poison because we'll be there probably.
Yep.
But yeah, so thank you once again.
Itch.
Thank you once. The what?
Like a bad itch.
Yeah, there we go. A bad itch. That's our tagline. So I don't think that's our tagline. But thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time, whether you're ready or not. Yeah. All right. Let's say bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye. No.